Hi, 2Xers. Welcome to the 2X e-commerce podcast show. I'm your host, Kunle Campbell, and this is a podcast dedicated to rapid growth in online retail. If you're looking to grow metrics such as conversions, average order value, repeat customers, traffic, and ultimately sales, I handpick the guests that come on this show to share their expertise and experience. And my criteria is based on one thing. Can my guests pretty much provide valuable information and insights to help you rapidly grow those metrics I talked about? If the answer is yes, I try my best to bring them on the show. Now, speaking of which, I'm joined by Aadith Moorthy. He is the founder and CEO of Radial. Now, Radial is a company that helps brands personalize content in every customer's personality. He's a serial entrepreneur in artificial intelligence, and he founded Radial in 2019 in response to the need to help him, just based on his experience from his previous company. He's a Stanford Knight-Hennessy Scholar and holds a master's degree from Stanford and an undergraduate degree from California Institute of Technology. This guy knows his stuff. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Aadith. Welcome, Aadith.
Yeah, thank you, Kunle.
All right, cheers.
Thank you for having me.
Before we kick off today's show, I'd like to give a quick shout out to our sponsors. Is your e-commerce store powered by Magento, BigCommerce, Commerce Cloud, WooCommerce, or a custom cat platform? Is it slow? Does it have too many fields or involves too many steps to complete a purchase? Enter Bolt. It's the fastest e-commerce checkout in the industry, period. Bolt loads 10x faster than native checkouts with an average checkout duration of just over 30 seconds. Bolt is mobile native with no scroll on mobile screens. It offers a zero fraud guarantee and has 42% fewer fields than native checkouts. Bolt supports Stripe, Apple Pay, PayPal, and several more payment gateways and providers. Bolt helped luxury sunglasses brand Dita reduce checkout abandonment by 32%, which resulted in a 50% conversion rate uplift. Don't lose customers at checkout, use Bolt. Bolt is offering a completely free bottom of funnel checkout audit to 2X e-commerce listeners. Head over to bolt.com/2X to get your free checkout audit now. That's bolt.com/2X. Fantastic. Okay, could you take a minute or less to introduce yourself and what you guys are doing in Radial, please?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I guess you did a great introduction for me already. So there isn't much I can say over that. So I initially founded Radial because I had a kind of similar issue to what a lot of brands face today. Is I have these customers coming to my website, but I don't really understand them, especially if they're new customers. I don't really understand them. And ideally, I'd like to show them exactly what they want to see, as opposed to just showing them something that most people like. That might get me half the way there to just show the thing that most people like to buy or most people like to know about. But in reality, if we can do even better than that, we might be able to extract that additional value that can result in like 20% increase in sales just by knowing knowing exactly who you are speaking to and providing the right information to that person. And by speaking, I mean broadly, like any kind of experience, any kind of products that are shown, all of that can be fully personalized to who is coming on, as opposed to just showing the average or the mean of everyone else in this system. So that's where initially I got started on Radial. And at Radial, what we do today is we help brands to personalize content to every customer's personality. And basically, that's the psychographics, the fundamental stuff that makes us tick. What motivates what we do? What motivates our intentions and behaviors and how we approach the world when we try to make any of these decisions? So that is the psychographics. It's more fundamental than the demographics. And we enable brands to personalize to the psychographics.
I love that. I love the fact that you said the psychographics is much more granular, where we do demographic targeting, interest, and demographic targeting on many advertising platforms.
Right.
But you're talking about psychographics, how they think, what motivates them, which is really, really what brings us to an entirely new space. Okay, so where do we start? Let's start out with what you guys do particularly, because for me, personalization in e-commerce, I actually wrote a 3-piece article for BigCommerce about 2 years ago around personalization and areas I thought could improve, across personalization. One was on-site personalization, exactly what you see, in the context of e-commerce. I think personalization would be the product recommendation. So if my preference is I like black t-shirts and I'm in a catalog with t-shirts, the black t-shirt should automatically pop up on the catalog on the category page. And then I also talked about messaging. So from email messaging through to like on-site messaging, personalization again could be quite improved. So what areas do you cover with Radial?
Yeah, so Radial actually is fundamentally at its core, it's sort of a data platform that enables psychographic segmentation and psychographic one-on-one personalization to be done. So it's you could in theory use it for any of these different applications to personalize to a person's personality and values and lifestyles through the psychographics.
Okay.
But we have some ready-made pieces available for the most common kinds of things. Like as you said, on-site personalization. It's one of the very, very common things is just product recommendations or personalized search. So we have ready-made plugins for our customers to just integrate that and get the ball rolling very, very fast for those things.
Okay.
But for the more niche and more complicated things, we also have a series of APIs that you can draw on to immediately use our data platform to personalize anything.
Okay. So does that mean that you could be a data layer through your API?
Yes, exactly. So
Okay.
our APIs are fundamentally a data layer, and then we have these small widgets and the personalization code sets that you can integrate to do the product recommendations and other kinds of stuff.
Okay. So for our listeners who don't know what data layer is, it's more or less a pipeline for data from platform to platform. Now, at the data layer, could you pipe into like an email provider? So you have an email list. It could be in the thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. It'd be great to know more about each customer of as many psychographic touch points in the customer. Is this possible with Radial?
Yeah, as long as you legally have all of their consent and you're following GDPR and all of those regulations, and you can use those emails. Yes, we can make this happen. We'll be able to generate, for example, we can generate personality scores for all of these customers, and then based on the personality scores, you can personalize anything.
Okay, now let's get into this psychographics and the personality scores. What does a psychographic profile look like?
Yeah, so usually when people think of psychographics, they usually think in terms of market segmentation, that that these are the personalities and this is my market, and they think in very qualitative ways. But in the case of Radial, what a psychographic profile looks for us is it's very quantitative. So we're able to tell, for example, Kunle, how are you an ambivert? Are you 50% extroverted? Are you 75% extroverted? Are you 10% extroverted? It means you're mostly introvert. But I guess you must be very extroverted because you're such a great podcast host.
Interestingly, far from it. One of the major reasons I decided to get into podcasting was I was not going out enough. I was not going to conferences, enough. I was not networking. So I thought, okay, this would be the perfect avenue to meet people on a regular basis and get out of my comfort zone. But speaking of which, right? I really want to figure out how you guys know. How does AI know my personality? What are the touch points? So if I use my email address, as in, how do you know it's me on a website? How does AI know it's me on a website, and how does it apply, a psychographic, profile to me, knowing that it's me, Kunle, and where does it get the data from on my
Hmm.
personality?
Yeah, that is a great question. So we have a variety of ways, but fundamentally, in the core, what we do have is we have a series of deep learning models. So deep learning is the most cutting edge form of machine learning and AI that everyone likes to talk about right now. When most people talk about like AI and autonomous cars and things like that, they're talking actually about deep learning, which is neural networks.
Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. Did you know that cloud-hosted e-commerce platforms like Shopify and BigCommerce do not provide automatic backups? Rewind steps in to protect Shopify and BigCommerce stores with automatic backups. Rewind is trusted by over 25,000 stores. Install Rewind and get to test it for free over 7 days. And to extend the 7-day trial to 30 days, head over to rewind.io, their website, and mention 2x eCommerce.
Neural networks, which are basically like supposed to imitate how the brain looks like, but it's just a mathematical model at the end of the day. A mathematical model that can do a lot of stuff. And right now we have at Radial, we have these deep learning models that can, for example, one of the models, what it can do is it can read the text that you've written. Like I can read the blog posts and things that you've written. Well, actually not me, but the model can read it and then be able to predict your personality based on how you write and how you think. So we have this kind of technology. So you can think of it sort of like sentiment analysis. Maybe your listeners are already familiar with sentiment analysis, reading the reviews, and you might have a small AI algorithm that can read the reviews and tell whether it's positive or negative review about your product.
Okay,
so this is an
go for it. Sorry.
Yeah. So this is an extension of sentiment analysis, where instead of just predicting sentiment, we're predicting your personality traits. Like, as I mentioned, extrovert, how open you are to new experiences, things like that.
Okay, but where I'm trying to get to is a platform like Facebook owns at least 3 platforms users interact with on a daily basis: WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook. Within the constraints of data protection, GDPR and the like, they are able to build a picture about me, as in quite accurately, because they see my interactions in their messenger, platform. They see the kind of post I write on Facebook, on all their private properties. They see the kind of messages. They claim not to see the kind of messages I put in WhatsApp, but Instagram, Facebook, Messenger, those platforms are quite insightful for the platform. They have those platforms, and then they have their pixels installed on so many websites, so they probably know more about me than I know about myself. So with Radial, where are the data points to build a profile with deep learning on individuals?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it turns out that there's, at the very, very, very broad level, there's 2 different major kinds of data out there. There's structured data, and then there's unstructured data. So you mentioned now Facebook and Google and others, they tend to have a lot of structured data that they tend to use to make their results about you. They're starting to also use some unstructured data on a much greater scale. But mainly, like, for example, I go online and I search for black t-shirts. There's a tag now associated with my account saying I like black t-shirts. There's a tag that's somewhere stored that I have some preference for black t-shirts. And then you'll see an ad for black t-shirt later on. So there's all this structured data that Google is able to collect. But then there's the unstructured data out there, which is quite significant. A lot of it actually, even in the public domain. Like, for example, Twitter. There's a lot of Twitter data just out there. that you can just go and read other people's tweets pretty openly. It's not true exactly with Facebook, but in the case of Twitter and in case of blogs, it's completely, you can read anyone's tweet and you can read other people's blogs. So there's a lot of this unstructured data. And we at Radial, we believe that you can actually get a lot of insight out of this unstructured data now, especially with deep learning. You can extract insights out, and then starting from those insights, you can start to perform personalization at scale on your platform, on your interface. So in the case of Radial, for example, we're able to study a lot of these blogs, Twitter, even sources like Wikipedia, for example. We're able to take text, which is unstructured data, and we're able to teach a model, a deep learning model, to extract out what makes Kunle really tick. Whether he's extroverted or introverted, how open he is to new experiences. Is he a very conscientious buyer, or is he more of an impulsive buyer? It's a different thing you have to do to both those categories. Okay. And all the way in between, like you could be 50-50 or 20-80 or whatever.
Right. So I like to think that my wife is like I use her as a litmus test for a lot of things when I'm testing in e-commerce, because I think she's a typical, buyer. She spends most of her time on Amazon. She shops for the house basically, and every day the package is coming into the house. Now she doesn't have a Twitter, neither does she blog. If she was to go into a website, how would Radial sort of figure out who she is and her sentiments?
Right. Yeah. So there's the two aspects. There's the aspect of we're able to study all these blogs and Twitter and build out this information. Then there's also the aspect that if we don't have any of that information, we've built out like a heuristic model of different countries and generally of many of the major countries. Like, for example, I'll give you a United States example. For example, we can extract out a lot of information that's coming from your browser right when you come to the website, and enable personalization based on heuristics that we've built on that. So what does that mean? For example, I'm in San Francisco, or at least very near San Francisco. And imagine that I had a friend who is living in Atlanta, Georgia. Very, very far away places. And it actually turns out from our own from our own modeling, we've seen that the personality distribution, in the distribution of how people's personalities fall and how people think in Atlanta, Georgia, is actually statistically different than how people think and how the distribution of personalities in San Francisco. So as a very, very first level of layer, when my friend goes to a Radial website from Atlanta, Georgia, compared to when I go to it, there's a geographical layer. Just from our IPs, I know that we're coming from these different areas, and the models already suggest that your personality coming from Atlanta, Georgia is going to be maybe 20%, maybe 45% extroverted, and mine's going to be 55 or 60% extroverted. And it's statistically significant within a certain margin, so you can actually differentiate those two people completely. And thus, that's one layer, the geographical layer. And then there's other layers, like there's other kinds of information we can extract from the browser just at the runtime when a person comes in.
Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. Klaviyo is a growth marketing platform that powers over 25,000 online businesses. Klaviyo understands every single customer interaction and empowers brands to create more personalized marketing moments. Listen, analyze, and act on your customer data with Klaviyo. Visit klaviyo.com/2x.
So all of that comes together to produce what essentially is like, you can imagine it like 100,000 buckets, 100,000 segments, sort of, as opposed to deciding to do like 3 or 4 segments of people you're targeting to. Imagine if you could immediately assign to one of 100,000 segments. That's what our heuristic function actually does. Based on the browser information, we can assign you to one of those 100,000 segments. So when your wife comes in, we can assign her immediately to one of those 100,000, and then we can personalize from there.
Okay. And is the aim to get as many websites as possible to run Radial, so you have a unified customer record for every sort of shopper?
Yeah, so that's very insightful of you to just jump to that without me actually saying it. But I guess you're so experienced, so you have the right logic here. Yes, exactly. So I mentioned 1 in 100,000 buckets. As you use more Radial websites, we go from 1 in 100,000 buckets to like 1 in hundreds of millions of buckets. So that's eventually getting to one-on-one personalization.
So is it going to, is it a freemium model you're running now just to encourage brands to install, because you're on the Shopify app, right? App store, right?
Yeah, so you can use this on Shopify. Our app on the App Store is currently private, not public. So so you can contact us and you can install it immediately. You can contact us on our website from radialml.com, and you can sign up to use the app pretty easily. But yeah, so we want to encourage as many people to adopt as possible, so that it actually becomes better for everyone very, very fast.
So what's the primary key or primary identifier for per shopper or per customer?
Yeah, so it comes from our heuristic. So it is a combination of where you're located and your various personality attributes and various other browser related information that we're able to bring on. And of course we're fine with using any kind of like other kinds of technology out there, like any kinds of cookies, but cookies are dying obviously. But we can definitely transform to any kind of a future solution for understanding customers at scale. But immediately we can do any kind of differentiation based on your browser and IP and other kinds of attributes.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking is like personalized email platforms, they don't work at the psychographic level as you alluded to, but they're working at like more segmentation. Right. And their primary key, they obviously have like a technical primary key somewhere in the back end, but their primary key is email. So yeah, and they have that email information, and then they build a profile on exactly what that email has done for a lifetime, whether they've added abandoned cart, whether they browsed the category, everything just there, almost like a customer file. Yeah, it's just fascinating to see how how unified it is, because like Facebook, I guess, also have like a UID, and so they know me, they know the shops I've all the websites I've been through, so long as those have the pixel. But it's really fascinating at the psychographic level what you're able to extract. Okay, I guess my final question will have to do with what you think the future would look like. So what are your predictions for personalization in e-commerce over the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, sure, thanks. So it turns out that in the last couple of months, I've had the opportunity to speak to a lot of people who are working on this kind of data science at large consumer companies out in the world, like the major shoe brands, major e-commerce brands, all sorts of brands. And I've been able to understand from them. So my predictions are actually informed by talking to the people who are actually trying to implement this at big brands. It turns out that a lot of people are targeting doing personalization much faster than they anticipated before. So I guess this is a very, very, very small positive to COVID-19. But basically, because of COVID-19, there's been huge amount of digitization, and there's more consumers online than ever before. And now brands really feel the pressure that they must really get to the personalization stage. Like Amazon and Walmart already do this to a very, very large level. But then everyone else is still trying to play catch up and trying to get there. Both the big brands and also the up and coming D2C brands, they're all trying to eventually get there. And that point, the promised land, is to have every single touch point that the customer interacts with personalized. Every single touch point personalized. That's a very lofty goal, but everyone is headed for that goal in order to maximize what they're doing. I guess 2x, not just 2x, but to 5x and 10x it.
Yeah. Incredible. And I love what you have on your website, which is let's end discrimination. Demographic-based marketing is discriminatory. Radial instead uses psychographics, which is personalities, values, and lifestyles of individuals, which is apt, to say the least. Yeah. Right. Thank you so much, Aadith. It's been a pleasure having you. For those who want to find out more about Radial, go to radialml.com. That's radialml.com. I will link to it in the show notes. Are you on social media? For anybody who wants to just follow you, your works, are you active on any social media platforms?
Yeah, so you can definitely follow me on LinkedIn. Invite your listeners to add me on LinkedIn.
Okay, brilliant. We'll link to your LinkedIn also in the show notes.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure having you on the show, and thank you for sharing your knowledge on one-to-one psychographic-led personalization.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Cheers.